thanks for taking the time to do this. Appreciate your time, particularly, of course, as we're on the home stretch to the release of your new album out this Friday, 29th of September, Long Branch Records. How are you feeling at the moment?
Uh, yeah, it's time has advanced so fast recently, and there's so much going on and so much to do. It's sometimes hard when you're getting into the week of the release, actually, even to realize that you're going to release a new album in a couple of days. It's just weird. At some point, it just becomes a date, and we've released the singles, and we've heard the album itself 1,000 times and gone through, the mixing, the songwriting processes, the first mastering version to the third, and so kind of I don't know, it just comes out and then it's out there, and then yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a thing to celebrate, but at the same time, it's sort of, it's just a day like every other, and there's enough things surrounding it and things to do. So, yeah, but the nice thing about it will be that we actually, for the first time, then get some feedback as well from, all the fans who will then will hopefully listen to it. And then, so that wave is, of course, coming. Yeah, that's cool.
This isn't, of course, your first rodeo when it comes to releases. Do you enjoy the long build that comes with a release, the drip feeding of content, and the teasing of your listener base?
Well, things have changed a little bit considering that, because nowadays there's a lot more social media stuff to do. A lot more singles get released. It used to be different. You would maybe release 2 singles. You would release the album, just as teasers, and then that was it. And nowadays it's sort of like a lot of single celebration. I don't really know how I feel about that, because like for an artist, it's sort of more exhausting, because it's a whole lot longer process and like a run of promotion, and most of the time you have to do it yourself. So of course, it's nice to present new stuff, but at the same time, it's also stealing away the time you would maybe have to, for yourself, or to write new stuff. Like it's taking the focus away, and that's sort of But these are new developments. That's why I don't really know how I feel towards that. Honestly, like it's nice to present the stuff and to tease people, but I'm not so much a fan of over teasing. Like maybe 3 singles would have been enough, or just 2. And the hype for the album even bigger. Nowadays, it's just a different concept. Also, labels want to work differently. They want to work like a long promo time in advance, and they want 4 singles released and this and that. And you have to promote the single for 2 weeks, or you can do it. But things used to be very different. Like we used to never do that kind of stuff during our 3rd album or our 2nd, because the whole internet world wasn't so huge yet back then. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, you've nailed it, really. You said it yourself. It's a different game now, and it's changed. And yeah, can you personally find something to enjoy in all of that process? You finish an album, it's done, you complete it, and you've now got to do this long process. What areas can you point at that you personally enjoy?
Well, if it's a cool music video, I like to share it and to somehow, if it's to tell a story or whatever, and the song comes to life through a visual element, that's something that I like to share. Or I also like to participate in music videos, and that's sort of like the thing that I like to do. And I know it's like promo and stuff, but that's one of the things. And of course, every time I release, or we release a single, I'm sort of curious about the feedback. But at some point, you can overdo it, and that's sort of the thing, like just releasing singles by single and teasing. It's I don't know. I think maybe this time we a little bit overdid it. I'm not so sure about that myself, but it feels a little bit like that, because you're just releasing stuff via the internet, and it's sort of, I'd rather get out on the road with the full record and play, rather than I'm sitting at home on my smartphone and going for Instagram stories and tagging these people and tagging those. You know what I mean? It's like I'd just rather go on the road and throw out the record and be like, yeah, let's celebrate this together on tour. Let's have even more dates, you know, rather than more time on my phone.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say, hey, it'll definitely continue. It'll go back to that, but I don't think it is.
No, it's not. It's not.
You mentioned feedback, say talking and focusing on the singles. Where's your line there? How do you balance that? Are you going on YouTube reading all the comments, Facebook, stuff like that, or are you able to distance yourself from that?
I think all three of us usually just give it some time, you know, like if you do an Instagram post in the morning, maybe you'll then let it live for throughout the day, and then you'll check in the evening and then maybe respond. So sometimes you respond immediately. With YouTube, it's a different thing because it's a different format and it's about music video. So we many times set up a premiere, so you can actually chat with the fans live watching it. And yeah, and after maybe a couple of days or weeks, it really can differ. You of course like to go through the comments and read what people thought, and then you might reply, but I really don't have a system. It's, you know, it's pretty dependent on what else is going on at the moment. So yeah.
Which is the right way to sort of think of it. You're going to do it when you have the time, the mental capacity, all of that.
Exactly. But the thing is, we of course like to engage also with our fans. Like it's actually something nice, and some of the good sides of social media that you can actually engage directly with the fans or with people, and you know, say thank you, or hey, check out this, or what do you guys think of that, and this and that, and you know, then you have small chit chats, and that's kind of like a nice thing. Yeah.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot more engagement come the release, because it is a phenomenal record. We rated it 10 out of 10 and have called it one of the best and most creative albums of this entire year. At what point did you realize that you had something pretty special in your hands here?
I don't know if when you're in a band, you always see your new work as something super special. I would always say it's like the best music we tried to write at the time, and it's a good record. It's a special record, but yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you get maybe that vibe from when you've written a couple of songs, and then you know how they match together, or how they maybe become friends with each other and they work together well. Then you're sort of getting a feeling towards, hey, this is kind of like a special run of songs that we have, but it's more like a feeling you have throughout the writing process when you've maybe also finished a track and you're like, hey, this is really cool how these certain pieces connect to each other. But there was, at least for me, there was not this moment that we finished the record and then I was like, wow, this is so amazing and this is special, you know. many times you don't really even know how to first feel about a record, because you need you know, you're stuck in that process so deeply, from the first songwriting demos to the last stage in the mastering and the mixing and all the thousands of stages in between, that you actually need a little bit distance from it first, and maybe like a couple of months later you'll come back to it and be like, wow, hey, this actually turned out a lot better than what I thought, or it's or whatever your feeling is. Yeah.
Cool. Well, take me back to the early days of its inception, specifically your vision. Did you have one for what you wanted this record to look like?
No, we used to have that maybe in the past with previous records, that there was maybe like a concept or like underlying concept story to it, and we would say, hey, let's musically do this, or try to work with the lyrics this kind of way. If this is going to be the theme, then we're going to, you know, write these kind of pieces, and then hopefully they work a certain way with each other. This time there was no thread, there was no concept, or there wasn't a storyline. There were no lyrics in the beginning. We just, you know, started to write music and collect pieces, and then sort of throughout the way it sort of crystal itself out what it was going to be. And
do you remember? Can you remember a specific point when I guess you could say it all started to come together, when you were completing tracks, you realized that this was going to be the complete album, so to speak?
Yeah, that was pretty much when we met together and rented ourselves into a holiday home. That was in the middle of a lockdown here in Germany, actually. But we were allowed to travel because it was our work. So we got a work permit and everything, and rented this holiday home in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in northern Germany. It was countryside. And we listened together at all the material that was already there. Worked on one piece, worked on three more. Those three sort of were finished in their instrumental form and came to be, and they matched kind of a couple of pieces that we already had written at that time. And that was sort of the point where we understood, hey, this is going to be a more atmospherical and album that goes sort of more, if it's hard, goes more into death and black metal, and we have these, you know, very dark vibes mixed with these acoustic and atmospheric vibes, and we should stick to this rather than break this concept, because we now already have too many pieces that are like that have the same sort of feeling, although they're stylistically apart from one another. So then we kicked another song that we actually wrote in the holiday home because it just did not fit stylistically into the whole thing. And we also kicked a couple of other pieces that were basically already finished, but they were having such a different vibe that you would have somehow, you know, broken the cycle of feeling, of the underlying feeling that these songs had in common. Maybe that was the point. Yeah, we realized what kind of work this album is going to be.
It sounds like it was all very natural. Like you didn't necessarily have a clear, like, this is what we want it to be, and instead you explored it, your creative juices got flowing, and this is what came out.
Yeah, that was very much the process at this time. And when we basically had finished that holiday home episode, we it didn't take so much longer until we had a couple of other tracks, and then we sort of realized we're not even missing so much anymore. So it kind of came out really naturally. Yeah, it did.
That stuff that you've kind of didn't fit, that you dropped, effectively pushed to the side. Who knows? Come back to it later on.
Well, yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about that yet, but basically there's still more material. It's just it has a different vibe to it. But asking me, I would always say, well, you know, those are cool tracks, or you can make something out of it. Let's just make another EP out of it, or whatever, or rework them. You know, like never say never. And if they're basically cool tracks that still have a cool vibe, why not do them? But we haven't talked about that yet. So I mean, we actually released a couple of those tracks as bonus material in our limited album box version. So you'll only have access to it if you buy the box. That's kind of like a cool gimmick. Of course, just instrumental demos and in their, you know, status a couple of years back already by now. But let's see. Never say never.
Yeah, that's still cool for people that do pick up the box to have those there, really, you know, to have that extra thing. It's a drive to want to pick up the box.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, we hope they do.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so overall, thinking about the entire album creation process, for you personally, what were some of the more challenging aspects to creating this album?
That's a difficult question, because once I started writing songs, I kind of like knew what I wanted to do, and that already worked out pretty well. I think maybe for me it was sort of in the end trying to understand what kind of album this is going to be, what we were missing, and kind of coming to coming to a common agreement on what the thing is going to be, you know, because sometimes you maybe might have a different vision than your bandmates or than the other bandmates, and yeah, I think that was sort of the only struggle that I could have kept writing songs, but but then sort of I did, but then again there was a different vision by the other two to like finish off the album in a different way and sort of not write more songs. And yeah, that's maybe getting used to the other view of things. Maybe that was the hard part, to understand fully what it's going to be that you're writing. Yeah.
How do you settle to use the word dispute if you want, when you're kind of, you know, you're talking with it amongst yourselves about, okay, we want to do this and we want to do that. How do you guys settle it?
Well, some things are settled really quickly, you know. It's just sometimes it's something that is just very tiny and maybe not so important, which is settled super quick, or just the other way around, that it's some kind of, you know, maybe someone's used to, I don't know, the drums in exactly that demo and doesn't want them to change, and then, you know, you're switching song parts with each other, and it's a lot about taste. Those are difficult issues because many times you're just arguing about taste, you know, and not about the parts actually not working with each other, because they do. It's just a personal preference. I think that's sort of the difficult thing, to get those preferences to be able to put them aside yourselves and to be more open to, you know, to things just turning out different, and maybe it's cool that way. Yeah, I don't know, really depending on what it is. The arguing can go on for long, or can be solved very quickly. Or there's also this option that it's just, you know, being left to lie around, and then after a couple of weeks nobody even cares anymore. It's just sort of seemed at a time really important, and then suddenly it isn't, and then it's like, ah, well, yeah, okay, well, let's then just leave it this way.
I love it. I love it. Sticking with the entire album process, but on the opposite side of things, what was some of the more fun and exciting aspects of creating the record for you?
Well, for me, it was there were a couple of tracks where I could sort of just do whatever I wanted. That's like the last track on the album, which is called Eristus, this Finnish name, which is based on this cello picking figure. And basically the whole song is just my instrumental arrangement, and I was just playing around with sounds and with the instruments and just programming stuff and putting some piano into it, some electric guitar and everything. And I could just do what I wanted. And I hadn't even presented that idea to the others, but then, you know, they just took the instrumental, and then our guitarist and singer Neil sort of recorded vocals over it. But I liked sort of also, I enjoyed the process of just writing stuff by myself, and that it kind of, you know, fitted the taste of the band, and I could do whatever I wanted in there. Just, you know, going for it. And a lot of it was written in lockdown, so you know, you couldn't do much. People were sitting at home, and I also had a time in Berlin here where I was kind of like just enjoying getting deeper into songwriting, and let maybe an idea lie around for a little bit longer, and then returning to it and just, you know, crafting it on the way that I want it, like painting the picture and just taking your time with it. That was a lot of fun. And I also enjoyed maybe diving into the sound production world this time a little bit more, because there's more sound design going on this album than on the previous record. And then I also really enjoyed writing crazy drum parts. Our drummer Moritz hated me for that, because it meant that he didn't have much say in the songwriting, because a couple of pieces were already quite finished the way they were, but it just meant for him to, you know, he had to learn all that shit, and that was sort of must have been exhausting. But I sometimes like that. I sometimes like to write extreme drum parts, make them a little bit over the top and crazy, and then just to give it to the drummer and be like, okay, hey, so this would be the song. It would be cool if you could play exactly that way. I mean, because it kind of works, you know, what do you think? And then, yeah, it's yeah, sometimes you get yeah, some hateful remarks back, which is very funny. Yeah, must say I really enjoy it sometimes. So that was like a thing that I enjoyed about this album. It was just sort of a little bit the freedom of the pieces that, you know, that one sometimes had, and then just also giving stuff to others and be like, yeah, like I'm curious how it turns out now that I'm giving this to you, and you have to, you know, somehow apply it to your style and then record it one day, whatever comes out of that. You know,
It seems like you didn't really put any limits on your own creativity. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, sometimes we like to also, you know, overdo things or make it just really extreme and find things out. Like I think there's this one black metally blasty track on the album that is called Blood, and actually we like at a lot later stage of the writing realized, actually shortly before recording, that the song was actually way too fast. It was just like, it was a bit too fast for the whole drumming and all those blast beats, and for the guitars and bass as well. So like we in last minute before the drum recordings decided to drop the whole piece by 4 beats per minute. So you know, things like that might happen at times, and then it's just sort of us in the writing process where it was like, holy shit, man, like this is a little bit like over the top, man. It's like a little bit too fast. Like, what the fuck did we even write this way? But you know, nowadays it's kind of cool with computer technology. You can just yeah, you can still change it. And before a studio recording session, mutually agree on, hey, let's take this tempo wise just down a little bit, because the song will work. You know, the song will work. Let's just not do this like the original demo.
Well, talking about specific tracks, then I want to ask you about one in particular, because in our review we kind of called you a brave band for starting off the album with something as dramatic, melodic, and emotive as Agora. It's a stunning piece of music. Creating that, did you always see that as an album opener, or did you have no idea really where that was going to originally fit?
If I remember right, then shucks. Okay, I'm not sure anymore if this is like 100% correct, because this must have been in April 2021. And Otis, the second track following Agora, was already finished by then. And I knew I had expressed this idea that I would find it cool if we do this Otis track. It would be a song completely without harsh vocals, growls, or anything. And if we would start off the album maybe with something atmospheric and soft, but we didn't have Agora written at that time. I just like the feeling of starting this time very differently, and maybe going like 15 minutes into the album and not, you know, heard one growl before, like until that point, so that people would be like maybe surprised that we're not pulling out our traditional trademarks as we used to, you know, like directly. So and that was also like a good step to not repeat yourself as well. And then I think Agora was just sort of developing. It used to be a track with drums and an electric guitar first, actually, like nothing heavy, but sort of more like the figure came from the electric guitar that was based on a demo by Niels, our guitarist. And then we went through different demo stages, and at the end stripped down the whole thing and just went with an acoustic guitar and bass. And then Niels and me kind of like wrote that piece in the holiday home. And that was the moment where I was like, hey, this feels cool, and this fits also harmony wise totally to Otis. So then actually there's even a chord progression in Agora that is at the end of Otis. Like it's yeah, it's being quoted, although it's very hidden. So and I knew I wanted to integrate those harmonies into that piece to make them somehow fit together. So then I think like we naturally realized that those two could go well together, and that we would start the album off very clean. And yeah,
It's
that's
a
yeah, it's difficult for me to remember, because sometimes these processes are sort of mixed, and you have an idea and then you realize it goes well together with this other idea, but then you're not quite there yet, and then you just have this kind of vision and this feeling that you would like to start things off differently, but you don't know what you're missing. And then in the writing of that song, it turns out to be that was exactly what you were looking for, the thing that you're creating at the moment. And that's why it's it's hard to sometimes explain why these things just come about, but it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sort of well aware of that. I have to ask you to cast your mind back good few years to remember feelings sometimes as much as anything else.
Yeah.
You used the word surprise though, and I'm glad you used the word surprise, because that was my reaction to it. Although I love it, it was still a surprise. Oh, this is how they're starting the record off. Okay then.
Yeah, the listener has no idea what's coming. That's a nice part actually after Otis, that's then where you have like arrived in the album, and that's where it takes off.
What other areas within the Hirsch Effekt do you find allows you personally to satisfy your creative cravings? For example, earlier on you mentioned enjoying the video creation, but are there other areas like maybe input with artwork, things like that, that you can find yourself being quite creative with?
Well, mainly it's really the writing phase, and also when we're doing set lists, I like to recommend set lists to the other guys, because I like to create like a cycle of songs from different albums that will maybe give an interesting live listening experience, and that's made of songs that somehow have an interesting thread overall, like interesting dynamics going on. So I like to do that a lot, to make the song choices and then just recommend a set list to the others, because I think I have a good feeling for that. And it's also challenging because you can never play all of the tracks, and you have to like make hard choices of kicking this song out and taking this one in, and having this on the one side and this on the other. I mean, like, I have to make this decision right now, because both won't fit. What is it going to be? So that's something cool, because it's not so easy, and you keep going back and forth, and then then you still have to find a solution together if the other two guys have the same taste like myself, and consider it a good set list. So yeah, that's what I like. And music videos, yeah, I mean, if we're involved, then sometimes it's kind of like nice to do. This time we weren't so much involved though, but I actually always enjoyed that. I think it's very something that's an interesting process, because you just don't really know what you're creating, and then at some point you see the outcome. It's and it has not so much to do with making music itself, but it's a lot about different aspects: acting, places, cinematography, and everything. It's working with different kind of people who are not musicians or producers. It's interesting, yeah, to work out the concept and then sort of happen in the music video yourself.
Yeah, and it's always fascinating to see a video also like visually capture the vibe and feeling that the music is portraying, as well as that can often be a great experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what I like. Yeah, merch designs we discuss mostly like as a 3-piece, and pretty good at it. Find quick solutions. With the artwork, it's most of the time that we don't have much to say in it, because we've been doing the artworks with Alejandro Chaveta from San Francisco, who's done that since the first album. And basically at the end of the day, we just always give him the album and tell him to feel free to do whatever you want to do. And he always comes back with something completely amazing that somehow represents the vibe of the music and the concept, or the, you know, and everything, but it's impossible to like engage in the whole art thing, because he sends so much stuff around which is all amazing, where you're like, just wow, you know,
Yeah,
like
why bother? He's doing
incredible.
that.
Yeah, that's why we don't participate in the artwork at all. We'd maybe at the end of the day give a preference, what we think of, hey, this looks mostly like the album cover, I think this should be it. And then he's like, yeah, great, that's what I thought as well. Okay, I'll make this ready. And by the way, here are 4 different other panels and labels and everything. And then he, you know, like morphs the rest of the artwork into fitting the album cover, and it's just we're pretty mind blown every time.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you're right. You only have to look at the designs of your album artwork to know what an incredibly talented artist he is.
Yeah.
I got one more for you, and this is kind of hopefully looking back more than anything else. For you, what would be a good measure of this album's success when you were to look back on it in, say, a year's time?
Well, I think the biggest success is always the shows being packed, you know, people just showing up to the shows and buying maybe the record there, and giving us feedback, and they're really as much as people as possible turn up to the shows. That's, I think, the best feedback you can get. Of course, it's nice if magazines write nice stuff about it and give ratings. It's kind of like a cool thing, but at the end of the day, the voice that means us the most, I think, is always, you know, the voice of the fan and the community, and only at live shows you know, get that feedback, and you realize how the new songs also vibe with the people, and what it does, you know, creates energy in the room, and no other experience can give you that. Like, you know, you can try to describe an album with words, maybe come from a journalist, whatever. It's a great thing, but it will never be the same as, you know, standing with your fans in the room and celebrating those pieces. So that, I guess, that means the biggest success to us. Of course, also, you know, maybe getting into the charts would be a kind of nice thing, but it's more like a symbolical value. It's as I said, I think the most value is shown on tour.
Yeah, getting to play packed out venues with people who have come hungry, not just for what you've done in the past, but to hear these new songs played live, because it is a collection of stuff that, let's be honest, you could probably play the whole album on full and satisfy just about everybody in the crowd.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how that goes. We're going to go on tour now in 1 month time, I think, 3 weeks. So we're really looking forward to that. I'm super excited.
Saying that then, because you brought it up before, with the tour coming up, have you sorted the set list you want to play on this tour? Do you know exactly what you want to do?
Yeah. We've already rehearsed, and we know exactly what we're going to play. And also the songs we're not going to play.
On that front, we'll call it there. September 29th, this Friday as a time, recording via Long Branch Records. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much as well. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website, where reviews, news, and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at gbhbl. Just search for gbhbl and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.